press the bell icon so you can stay notified whenever I upload a new video. Helen Keller was born on 27 June 1880 in Tuscumbia, a small town in northern Alabama. And in these videos, I walk you through the chapter summaries of The Story of My Life, a novel written by Helen Keller.
Now, without further ado, let's get started with the chapter 13. It was in the spring of 1890 that Helen had finally learned to speak. The impulse to utter audible sounds had always been strong within her. She used to make noises by keeping one hand on her throat, while with the other hand she felt the movements of her lips. She was pleased with anything that made a noise, and liked to feel the cat purr and the dog bark. She especially recollects uttering the first word she ever said, and it was water. She pronounced it as wawa. Helen was aware of the fact that the way she used to communicate and the way that others used to communicate was very, very different. This is one particular extract from the novel, and it says, "I had known for a long time that people about me used a method of communication different from mine, and even before I knew that a deaf child could be taught to speak, I was conscious of dissatisfaction with the means of communication I already possessed. This feeling began to agitate me with a vexing, forward-reaching sense of a lack that should be fulfilled. My thoughts would often rise and beat up like birds against the wind, and I persisted in using my lips and voice." She was desperate to speak like normal people. Her friends tried to discourage this tendency, fearing that it would lead to her disappointment. And then she heard the story of Ragnhild Kata. She was a deaf and blind girl in Norway who had actually been taught to speak. Mrs. Lamson, who had been one of Laura Bridgman's teachers, who had just returned from a visit from Norway and Sweden, came to see her and told her about this person. Mrs. Lamson had scarcely finished telling her about this girl's success before she was on fire with her eagerness. She resolved that she will surely learn speaking. She then met Miss Sarah Fuller, who was the principal of the Horace Mann School. She then started learning from her and taking lessons from the 26th of March 1890. Miss Fuller's method was this. She passed her hand slightly over her face and then let her feel the position of her tongue and lips when she made a sound. She was eager to imitate every motion in an hour and learned 6 elements of speech: M, P, A, S, T, and I. Miss Fuller gave her 11 lessons in all. I shall never forget the surprise and delight I felt when I uttered my first connected sentence. "It is warm." True, they were broken and stammering syllables, but they were true human speech. My soul, conscious of new strength, came out of bondage and was reaching through those broken symbols of speech to all knowledge and faith. Helen felt that she had been freed from the prison of silence, and now she could communicate to her dogs or to Mildred. She eagerly talked to her toys, stones, trees, birds, and dumb animals, but she still had a long way to go to improve. Her words could only be understood by her family and friends or her teachers. She did a lot of practice to improve her speech all by herself. Her teacher, Miss Sullivan, devoted herself entirely to Helen's practice with great patience and understanding. Helen needed to progress towards natural speech so that she could be understood by her friends clearly. Secondly, she needed to combine all sounds in 1,000 ways, and many words were still mispronounced. Difficulties during learning to speak. Helen had to face strange difficulties in learning to speak. She had to depend totally on her fingers, use the sense of touch in catching the vibrations of her throat, the movements of the mouth, and the expressions of her face. She committed a lot of mistakes in this pursuit. Helen kept practicing vigorously, and she would become very tired in the end. Next minute, she would want to show her family what she had achieved. So this was full of both pleasure and suffering. After learning to speak, Helen could not wait to go home. Throughout her journey, Helen kept continuously telling to her teacher because she wished to show a lot of improvement. When the train stopped at the station, Helen's entire family was there to welcome her. Her mother pressed her closely and Helen's eyes filled with tears. Her sister Mildred kissed and danced on hearing each syllable spoken by Helen, and her father was extremely proud of her. Helen felt that God had been kind to her at last.
If you like this video, please subscribe and like. And for more such videos, you can click here. Till then, bye.